Hello and welcome to Precontation Points Video Snark. I'm continuing my Sarcastic book review of The Mister by E.L. James. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 9. So Elisa had fled out the fire escape and then hides in an alley, which is also protected via a locked gate. Because I guess we don't want peasants rummaging through rich people's trash. I don't know. She had recognized Dante's voice immediately, and all of her suppressed memories had surfaced in a terrifying rush. Of course the guy's name is Dante. I guess James hadn't wanted to be that on the nose and name him Evil Make-a-Donkey Hole. Ugh. Obviously, this leads Elisa down the increasingly awful path of a panic attack, even though we still don't know what Dante did to her. I mean, I have a few guesses based off of little clues as well as stuff that Twilight fans like to write about, but still, we don't know details. Eventually, Elisa decides that she has to check to see that Max is okay, so she climbs back up the fire escape to check on him. She doesn't go in and only just watches Max moving around in the living room for a moment through the window. Having determined that he's okay, she has to go check on Magda and Michael next. But before she leaves the alley, she looks around to make sure that Dante and... oh, holy Hades, no. I'm not going to pronounce that. There's no vowels. And I say that as somebody with a fine appreciation for Welsh. We switch over to Max, who is insanely worried over Elisa. He gets his keys and runs out the door, intent on going to Magda's house to see if she's okay. He isn't quite certain what that was all about, but he knows that it's not good. Either Elisa knows the men, or she actually thought that they were from immigration. We briefly switch over to Elisa. Her mind is obviously focused on her anxiety, the worry that Dante might have hurt Magda and or Michael. She also briefly thinks about how Max kissed her, about how he said that she was beautiful, but come on, book. Now isn't the time for that. She's also worried that she's out of a job because nobody likes it when your employees drag their drama into their home like that. As Max goes, his thoughts randomly turn to his last Christmas with Kit, how he and Marianne had met up with Kit and Caroline in Cuba and then flown to St. Vincent. After New Year's, Kit had died, and for the first time Max admits to himself that Kit's death might have been a suicide. Because this is what I really care about right now. All the sarcasm. Max finally gets to Magda's house, only for him to realize that with taking the train, obviously Max would have gotten there ahead of Elisa. He runs over to the train station, which isn't too far, and then waits as the train comes in. Elisa isn't there, and he has to wait another 15 minutes for the next train to get in, and Elisa was on that train. When Elisa sees him on the platform, she bursts into tears. He takes her back to Magda's house, but obviously since it's the middle of the afternoon, neither Magda nor Michael are there. And then Elisa sets about making tea, which is the most British thing ever, even though James doesn't rub this into our faces. Max then sets to ask her 20 questions so that he can figure out what's going on. He asks if she's in the UK legally, but she says no. She asks if he's going to tell the police, and he insists that he isn't going to do that. Elisa then explains that Dante brought Elisa and a bunch of other girls into the UK under the guise of work, and I've seen enough Law and Order Special Victims Unit to already know where this is going without Elisa needing to go on. Obviously he had other plans in mind for the girls rather than to clean houses. Magda gets in just before Elisa can tell Max how she escaped. After settling down with a cuppa for Magda, she tells Elisa and Max that Dante had a photo of Elisa and Michael, that they knew all of this personal info that they got off from Michael's Facebook account. And this, boys and girls, is why you don't put your personal info on that site. Heck, I've had to change my name on there, and I can't put up any more personal photos as profile pictures because people are awful. And they threatened Magda with this information, and in turn Magda gave them Max's address. Max asks about contacting the police, but the women are insistent about not getting the law involved, probably because Magda's status isn't quite legal either. Michael is staying with a friend, but Max is worried that Dante knows where Magda lives. Even if she's only going to be in the UK for another 2 weeks, that's 2 weeks for her to be constantly looking over her shoulder. He runs down the list of properties he owns, as well as the possibility of putting Elisa into Marianne's care for a while. He eventually asks that Elisa come with him for her protection, and then offers to put Magda up in a hotel. Elisa ponders over Max's offer for her to go with him, and he clarifies that he isn't expecting anything in return. He's doing this simply because it's the right thing to do. She does agree in the end, obviously. Magda wants to know what Dante wants from Elisa. Apparently she'd never told Magda, probably out of shame. And part of me gets it, but at the same time, Elisa is a victim of human trafficking. The government would probably be sympathetic towards her. But whatever, this is a story. Magda also refuses to leave the house, and Max promises her that he'll hire temporary security guards for her. And it just so happens that after Tom got his leg blown off in the Middle East, he opened up a private security firm. How convenient. All of Elisa's things fit into 2 grocery bags, a fact which makes her feel rather ashamed. Max doesn't say anything about that, however. Magda and Elisa say goodbye, knowing that the chance of them seeing one another soon are slim. Outside, the security guard Tom had sent over is there, and he briefly greets Max. As Max settles Elisa into the car, he thinks that maybe his reasoning for doing this isn't all that altruistic. Chapter 10. As Max is driving, he calls somebody who works for him and asks about some of the residences he now owns. One of them has a weekend slot booked for that weekend, so Max opts for the other one. He asks for 2 rooms and also snacks and breakfast. When he's done with that, he turns on some music in the hopes that it'll help soothe Elisa. Continuing to drive, Max thinks about how much he wants Elisa. He also wonders about the things that she must have been through, and then wonders about the abuse that she must have suffered after she was trafficked. And I realize that I can't touch her. He says this like it's the single most important thing in the world. He wants her, but he understands that he can't have her. Like, half a point for at least acknowledging that the touch of another man isn't going to instantly heal past trauma, but negative points for Max for thinking with his downstairs head instead. We briefly switch over to Lisa's point of view. She thinks of the last time she blindly trusted a man. It was Dante, and obviously we know how that turned out. She felt safe-ish in London because she was with the network of women who had helped rescue her, but now Max is taking her away from all of that, and at the end of the day, she doesn't know much about Max at all. And honestly, this entire situation is just so unbelievably icky to me, especially with Max coming off from the realization that he shouldn't touch her because of her trauma. After a while, Max pulls off to a service station by the side of the road and wakes Elisa up. He asks if she's hungry and if she needs to use the restroom. As they get out of the car, Elisa says that Dante brought the girls to a place like this. The idea was that they thought that the girls would fetch a higher price if they weren't dirty. Dante and his friends thought that none of the girls could speak English, but obviously Elisa could understand just enough. She warned the other girls, but most didn't believe her. However, enough did, and when Dante took the girls into the bathroom, they made a run for it. Elisa doesn't know what happened to the other girls because she was more concerned with her own safety. Max is naturally sympathetic towards what happened to her and holds her for a moment. He then randomly decided to ask if she wants a kiss, despite Max admitting that he shouldn't be doing stuff like that with her. Ugh, I can't. He instead kisses her on the cheek and forehead before encouraging her inside. Inside, Max says that he has to use the restroom, and obviously Lisa can't go into the men's with him. A really weird amount of time is spent describing to random women and the ladies, but I'm kind of willing to forgive it for the sake of Elisa hyper-focusing on things because of her trauma. When they're done, they meet up outside, and Max takes her to the Starbucks inside the building. They order coffee, hot chocolate, and paninis. Max obviously pays, and as they go to sit down, Elisa begins to worry about stuff like the rooms he'd ordered and how she's going to pay for it. Max tells her not to worry about money, which makes her think that he's loaded. However, she doesn't know what he does and seems to be under the impression that he's a composer, since it's the only actual work she's seen him doing. Elisa explains that her grandmother was from England who moved to Albania in the 1960s, which explains why she's so good at English. The barista gives them their sandwiches and drinks, and Max says that they'll take them on the road. In the car, he bites into his sandwich. The smell of it is overwhelming enough to the point where Elisa starts to eat hers, even though she'd previously insisted that she wasn't hungry. She laughs about Max's ploy to get her to eat. They continue along, but eventually stop to get gas, or petrol if we're going to be properly British. At the register, I slide my credit card into the chip and pin machine, conscious that she's watching my every move. "Your card is magic," Elisa says. "Magic?" I admit that I don't really know much about Albania, but the thought that not one single person in the entire country knows what a credit card is just seems highly unlikely. Even if Elisa or her parents or anybody in the town where she lived didn't have one, I promise you that she would have seen some old American movie or TV series in which somebody used a credit card. As they continue along, Elisa tells him that the town she's from is rural and isolated. Max says that they're going to Cornwall, which is also rural and isolated. Elisa tells him about her grandmother who went to Albania as a missionary. And of course, the British person has no concept of the fact that missionaries are toxic colonizers. But the grandmother came in bringing Bibles, which Elisa says was dangerous work. And I don't really care enough to look it up, mainly because even if this does contradict what Elisa is saying, what am I supposed to do about this knowledge? It was there that Elisa's grandmother fell in love with a local Albanian man and decided to stay and marry him. Max encourages her to pick a song, but she isn't familiar with a lot of his selection. She picks something at random, and Max explains that he DJs at a club sometimes. However, Elisa doesn't know what a club or a DJ are, although realistically, I would say that it's probably just a language barrier. However, this is the same girl who didn't know what a credit card was in James's vain attempt to write some naive country bumpkin. They finally arrive at the place where Max had previously arranged rooms for them. The place is more like a hotel rather than his actual estate. He knows that he could have taken her to the main estate but didn't know what to say about Elisa to the staff there. He also doesn't really know how to tell Elisa about his title, status, and money, but he also kind of likes the idea that she doesn't know that about him. He looks to Lisa, who is asleep. He briefly considers waking her with the kiss. And can we not with this creepy non-consensual moments book? But he has to remind himself yet again that he promised not to do that to her. Instead, he just calls out her name. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because sometimes I drop random videos on other days too. You can like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss a single video. While you're waiting for the next video, you can go check out all my other videos. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, then you can find even more Snarks on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month, plus you get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, you either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snarks so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $3 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, $3 for every 5,000 words. You can contact me on Tumblr if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have 19 erotic short stories, 1 short story collection, and 1 full-length novel. I also sometimes run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you know when I might be offering more things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!